Hello, it's Helen from Journal with Purpose and welcome to my latest video, which is all about die cutting. It's something I've been asked for quite a few times, so I'm going to guide you through the different tools that I use. My die cutting machine is a Sizzix Big Shot and I've had it for many years now, but they're certainly still available. And you have a platform which you put through the machine, and it has different layers in it which are suitable for different thicknesses of dies. And the dies that I'll be using in this video are really thin, so they'll just sit on that top platform. You also get 2 Perspex cutting sheets, and you can see that mine are all scratched and old now, but they work perfectly well. And the dies that I'll be using are from my own range, and I'll also be using a selection of different papers to show you how they come out. The first dies that I will be cutting with come from my Everyday Essentials die set. As you can see, these dies are really thin, which enables you to get a really nice intricate cut. So I'm just looking through the different dies to decide which ones I want to use. Lots of these dies are designed to sit inside each other so that you have more choice and variation. Once I've decided which dies I'm going to use, I will start looking through my paper packs. And the first set that I'm going to use are from my Everyday Journaling range. And I'm going to pick one of the really lovely muted green papers. And I really like keeping lots of different strips of papers because lots of the die cuts are really small, so you can always make really good use of those scraps. And you'll see with dies you've got a bumpy side which needs to sit on the paper because that's what cuts it, and the smooth side stays on top. And I always like to use some tiny strips of washi tape to keep those dies in place when I run them through the machine. One of my favourite things about die cutting is that you can use them over and over again with lots of different types of paper. So it can be quite expensive to get started, but once you've got everything you need, you can just keep using them, which I love. So I'm now putting that paper and the dies sandwiched in between the 2 Perspex sheets. And I then put them on top of the platform and start turning the handle to move that sheet through the die cutting machine. I got my die cutting machine about 5 years ago for my birthday, and it's definitely something I use on a regular basis. I like to use it for creating ephemera pieces for my journal and also for cutting out embellishments to decorate greetings cards. Now that the cutting is done, I'm going to remove the little strips of washi tape and pop those die cuts out of the sheet of paper. I'm not quite sure what it is about die cutting, but I just find something so satisfying about creating all of these ephemera pieces. Some die cuts you can pop straight out, and others you need to use a little stylus tool just to poke through the holes, and that helps to release the paper from the back of the die. This coffee cup is definitely one of my favourites, and it acts as a really great page marker inside your journal. And it was so lovely for me to see my designs turned into these dies. So next I'm just popping out the different sections of this leaf. When I get my die cutting machine out, I tend to do lots of cutting at the same time and get all of my different papers and dies together so that I can create a nice big bag of different die cuts for when I next sit down to do some journaling. So these are some that I've cut through on different days. Next up, I'm going to use some old vintage papers and also a London Gifties business card. And I'm using dies from my Floral Essentials die set. And I really like using lots of different pieces of paper that I find and business cards with pretty patterns on. It means you can turn them into something really pretty for your journal. One of the things that I really like to do with old greeting cards is run those through the die cutting machine too. So I've got a whole lovely box of Christmas journaling ephemera just ready to go from the cards that I received last year. These two dies that I'm using here can be put together to create a photo frame in your journal. And I'm using some ledger paper for this one. I'm now going to cut them up and see if I can get them all to fit on those Perspex sheets. In my Journal With Me videos, you'll notice that I often tear up pieces of paper to create some collage, and all of those little leftover scraps are absolutely great for using with small dies. Now that I've managed to fit all of those onto that sheet, I'm going to run it through the die cutting machine. At the end of this video, I'll share with you a couple of my journal pages to show how I use these dies inside my journal. So now that all of those are cut, I will again remove the strips of washi tape and pop out the shapes. With these, I've created a variety of journaling spots on different pieces of paper and card, and also some frames that I could use either for photos or even including some dried flowers or doodles inside. With this particular frame, it's got lots of tiny holes, so I'm just pushing all the way through to get that frame out. I'm then using the stylus to just poke any remaining pieces through. And the final shape is the photo frame that I've created using some ledger paper. One thing you can find with the really intricate dies is that pieces of paper get stuck inside it. And I've recently bought this Sizzix brush, and it works really well. You get a foam sheet and then you run the brush over the top of the die to release any of the final pieces that might have got stuck in. And it saved me a huge amount of time. The final die cutting that I'll be doing in this video will be using my Journal Essentials die set. And in this particular set, you've got pockets and tags, which I find particularly helpful for using in my journal. In this set, you'll notice that lots of the shapes fit inside each other, and that's because the one that goes inside actually has a stitched pattern on it. So it won't cut through your papers and cards, it will just leave a lovely stitched marking. For this final set, I'm going to use some scrapbooking paper. So I've looked through my Jane Davenport pack, but the one that I decide to go for is from this Tim Holtz Ideology set. And I really love the different vintage papers in this pack. The first thing I do is cut down that scrapbooking paper to the same size as the Perspex sheet. And I will now start laying the different dies on top of the paper and carefully taping them in place to make sure I get that stitched pattern. If you've not used a die cutting machine before, I really hope this video has been helpful to give you some ideas as to how different dies can be used and the wide variety of papers too. This is probably one of my favourite sets of dies because I love adding pockets and tags to my journal pages, and I really like being able to choose which papers I want to use. Now that those are all in place, I'll quickly run them through the die cutting machine and then I'll show you how I create that pocket. I really love how these are looking on that Tim Holtz paper, and it gives me the chance to create something unique for my journal. I'm now going to carefully pop each of the shapes out of their dies. And I'll also show you that stitched pattern on these tags. It's a bit hard to see on the camera, but hopefully you can see that little pattern all the way around it. I already can't wait to start adding these to my journal. This one here is another little page marker, so similar to the coffee cup, but just in a different shape. So this final piece is the pocket, and I'm using a folding tool to make sure that I get really nice creases. And there are score marks on the die so that you can see where to fold them. And you then just glue along the tabs on the back. These are some journal pages that I recently created using some of the different dies that you've seen me cut out in this video. So I've got the coffee cup and flowers, and on these pages I've used that pocket and the different tags inside. I really hope you've enjoyed watching this video. If you have, it'd be great if you'd leave it a thumbs up, and if you're new to my channel, I would love it if you would consider subscribing. If you've got any questions or comments, please do leave them down below. Thanks ever so much for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you really soon in the next one.